Hello folks, today I'm going to tell you about Evil Genius 2 World Domination, a game which I and many others have been waiting for years and didn't expect to see the sequel of the original. But it finally came out, and it's time for you to hear my perspective on how it turned out. Well, it turned out to be mediocre, so thanks for watching, leave a like.
I'm just kidding.
Yep, Evil Genius 2 is a pretty questionable game, and now I'll explain why. In this review I'm going to draw parallels to the first game, so if you haven't played it, I suggest you watch my review, or simply play it. It's pretty cheap on Steam even without a discount. To be fair, I beat this game once with Maximilian, thus I'm basing my review on him. You can always add something about other geniuses in the comments, thoughts or your personal experience with this game, if you have them. Feel free to comment about the review itself as well. So, Evil Genius 2, like its predecessor, is a strategy simulation game about building an underground base on a remote island. But the time of action has moved forward about 20 years. Political map of the world has changed, as one of the geniuses of the first game managed to seize control of the world, but it is obvious that its power did not last long, and the forces of justice took back the earth, slightly reshaping its regions. Under these circumstances, our game begins. Before starting the new game, we are given a choice of 4 geniuses, which is one more than in the first game. Here they are, from left to right. Maximilian von Klein, the gold crazed tycoon who was also in the first game. Apparently he wasn't the world conquering tyrant, losing to either Alexis or Shen Yu, and apparently false himself, as he hasn't changed at all in 20 years. Next up is Red Ivan, also from the first game, a mimetic character who was a henchman there. According to the lore, he worked for the victorious villain, and his master gave him a country, which he, having a great imagination, called Ivania. Then there's Zalika, a genius with a capital G, a scientist who created the AI Iris that works in all the bases of all the geniuses, and who will chirp in your ear for every minor thing. And lastly we have Emma, the former head of Hammer Intelligence, who overlooked the first evil genius rising to power. She got so pissed off she decided to bring order from the other side of the law. Each of them now has perks and abilities, as well as their own doomsday weapon, so these are really different characters in the second game. The main plot is just as different, but converges on one point: world domination. In addition, the evil genius is no longer just a damsel in distress, needed to protect it at all costs. Nowadays, the genius is quite able to defend himself, at least against simple agents, both in ranged and close combat. Also, they are now running around the base with good speed, which is a big plus when the base gets too big. But the auras of restoration of minions' characteristics didn't make it to the sequel, so that only a compact construction will help your people work effectively. You will be able to look at the genius, by the way, up close in dialogues with other characters, which are made in form of animated scenes from visual novels. After choosing which genius you will play as, you need to choose one of 3 islands where your base will be located, and each has its own advantages and disadvantages. For example, one island at the lower level has a large gold deposit, and the other has a huge space for construction. However, in this game you will not move to another island, you will stay on your island until the end of the game. These islands have a lot of space, with some exceptions, because there is now not 1, but 5 floors. It's nice without doubt, but then there starts the problem of gameplay design. The developers decided that if players have a shitload of space, then they need to fill it to the maximum. One room for each type is for pussies. No, Evil Genius 2 won't have that. Because of the balance, so to speak, of the economy, the amount of occupied space is growing exponentially. As an example, because of the new world map system, namely the need to create and improve the so-called criminal network, you need to build radio repeaters, which give a new resource, broadcast strength. This resource is needed to open up areas on the map and improve the criminal networks. The starter repeaters give 1 unit of broadcast strength, use a lot of space and power. Generators aren't exactly small either, though it will get better with the discovery of nuclear reactors. It's understandable that there are people who just like building, but the options in Evil Genius 2 are pretty limited, since the rooms will be the same, tailored to your needs as a player and your minions as your tools. The very process of building on the island remained mostly the same, except you can demolish a room entirely or partially, or you can use new items added specifically for decoration, giving you an opportunity to be somewhat creative. However, one thing has not made it to Evil Genius 2, and that's building on the surface. No more hotels or casinos there. The cover operation is built inside the island as your first line of defense, and is mandatory. However, you can edit it to your liking. You can build walls, ranged mazes of roulette tables and bars, slot machines and other items that reduce the stats of tourists and agents, diverting their attention from your shady dealings. On top of that, the casino actually generates money, so there is even a sort of return on investment. The other types of rooms have also been changed. Here we go. The corridor is still the same corridor, just pathways to other rooms. Only here you can put fire extinguishers, which can now be used by every type of minions, and only here you can install security cameras. And that's very dumb. Traps are only placed in corridor 2. The vault. There are no briefcase racks this time, gold just magically appears and disappears. Pallets and safe racks are now used to store gold, which also costs more money than they can store. Ironic. Apparently in this world, gold is cheaper than iron. It's unclear why Max loves it so much. Especially since this gold takes up shitloads of space. Control room. This is where you build radio repeaters, required to create criminal networks on the global map, and computer consoles, which create a separate resource, intel, necessary for most of the schemes. Barracks and mess hall. There is no longer a fundamental difference between the two, as there is no longer a day-night cycle, which is a shame. The only difference is that the beds restore vitality and morale, and the meals restore vitality and smarts. Well, yeah, even if there's no stamina now, why throw two types of rooms out of the game, right? Archive, staff room and infirmary. Items in the early game restore smarts, morale and vitality, respectively. From mid to late game, you receive additional items to increase the maximum amount of these stats. Training room is a place where minions develop and evolve. As it was before, it will take a lot of space, perhaps even more this time, just to have enough specialists for all the schemes, disposable specialists. The power station houses your generators. Just fucking enormous spaces will have to be wasted on this, even fusion generators don't really help much. On top of that, an incinerator is now being housed there, for your corpses disposal needs. For some reason, Rebellion didn't like the freezer from the first game. Laboratory. In the first game, its size was essentially fixed, because each machine could be built only once. Now, the speed of research directly depends on the number of identical machines and scientists servicing them. Armory. Room for weapon racks, security desks and guard tables. System of tracking through the cameras has changed. Each guard post allows a limited number of cameras. One minion behind the monitors is no longer enough, but muscle minions sitting at the guard desk receive the data directly. The prison, for some reason, is a separate room now. Holding cells are placed here, as well as an interrogation chair and a brain washer. Both are quite useful items. You can get intel even from random agents through interrogations, and a brain washer creates new minions out of enemy agents. The inner sanctum, home for your genius, varies in appearance from one genius to the next. As in the past, an impressive desk and a conference table are placed here, and now they are used throughout the game. The conference table also serves as a place to generate the stats of your henchmen. They are no longer able to heal themselves anywhere else. As for Doomsday weapon, you don't build it at all. It appears and grows on the island as the main story progresses. You only make passages to it so that evil genius can use it and the minions can review it. Over the course of the game you will be able to fire it at will, with each genius's weapon having a different effect. Max's weapon, for example, called Midas, creates a scheme on the map where it was used, bringing a lot of money in a short period of time. But such power comes at a price, as some of your minions turn to gold statues as a side effect. Which is actually nothing compared to Ivan's weapon, causing fires in a base which turn into a natural disaster. As a matter of fact, this effect captures Ivan's chaotic nature pretty well. The super weapon is probably the only major aspect the developers really improved over the first Evil Genius, and instead of simple checkbox and specifically the purpose of the game's objectives, became a gameplay feature. Regarding excavating new territories within the base and filling it with various cool and not so cool items, we need to address the updated research system, so to speak Research 2.0. No more pseudo-random, loot-dependent research, which I talked about in my first Evil Genius review, and the parallel discovery of dozens of items. We now have a generic technology tree divided into 5 groups. Global operations, unlocking items for enhancing broadcast strength and reducing the attention of the forces of justice. The layer, where you can find research of the improved items for your base, advanced generators, saves, minion boosters and of course improvements to digging, essential to your playthrough. Minions, where you can increase the maximum limit to 300 people, not 100 as in the first game. That's good, but still not enough. Increased stats of Evil Genius and Henchmen plus minions weaponry is researched here. Fourth group contains straps, pretty self-explanatory. Giant fans, shark tanks, leather walls, classics. Group 5 is objective-based research. Yeah, that's right. In order to progress through the game, you need to do purely single-use research, including those for side quests. Yet, this stuff now costs money, and the further you go, the more expensive it becomes. There is also no parallel research, meaning that if you research something for any quest, everything else will have to wait. Scientific progress can be accelerated by putting many of the same research machines, while each project requires different machines and different minions, and this in turn also consumes space. There are only 5 levels of technological development, each opening with some amount of completed projects. However, between second and third level, there is a huge hole in the pace of scientific progress. To go further, you will have to go through the story. The game doesn't tell you what to do, what opens what and when, and there you are sitting like a moron, waiting for some stuff to happen. And since level 3 contains a very useful digging technology, at this point is absolutely necessary since you are desperately lacking space to build, you have to rush the main story. What a shock, the rush in this goddamn game doesn't work too well. During my walkthrough, my journey from second to third level took about 8 hours. 8 fucking hours, probably the most dull part of the game, because the most fun begins only around third or fourth level. The funny thing is the game punishes you for rushing, and it does so at the expense of side quests. They include missions for hiring henchmen, stealing loot, discovering new types of minions and dealing with special agents. These missions don't stick around after opening, but disappear at certain points of the course of the main story. If you have not stolen an item, which takes a whole chain of tasks, such as do research, send minions to the world in 4 different places, kill or capture someone in your base, send minions to the world again, then this task simply disappears, and there will be no more opportunity to steal this loot. This is in contrast to the first game, where it was enough to send the necessary minions to a point on a world map. In a way, this pays off in that the loot is now distinct, not even in terms of appearance, but in terms of the perks it gives. For example, a flying pig quickly restores morale of builders and muscle minions. A piggy bank can store lots of gold. A Rumpelstiltskin's wool creates gold when a builder works in it. There are many different items, and each has a different effect. But this begs a question: are these items worth the time spent on them? And then you exclaim, well geez Tim, what a big deal, you sure can take a few side quests at a time and not bother. Simultaneously, you can only take one such mission, so that all these loot acquisitions, fighting super agents and hiring new minions are performed one by one. And as you can imagine, all this coupled with the disappearance of the loot missions really drag the game where it is unnecessary. That leaves you with 2 options. Either rush the story until the opening of the third level of research tree and skip some of the possible loot, or sit on your ass without a proper dig into the other floors of the island at good radio repeaters. Isn't that great? So what are the conditions for opening third level? It's simple, all you need is a biologist, but the game doesn't tell you that anywhere until you unlock the biologist. That is not even completion of the main objective, but is completion of a side quest to open this type of minion. Very fucking convenient. Oh, one more thing I forgot. In progression of the main story, there are quests that literally called a moment's calm, or a moment of preparation, that will require you to discover new types of minions, steal some loot and stuff like that. Why do not include the progress of your minions in the story if it is mandatory? I absolutely do not understand. One incomprehensible solution after another, apparently that's why I'm not a game designer. Henchman recruitment has also undergone some changes. Whereas the first Evil Genius required you to gain a certain level of notoriety and send a minion to a region with Henchman's Act of Infamy, this one requires you to complete a chain of side missions, roughly the same as the loot ones. Send minions into the world, do research, whack enemies at your base, then do it again. After that, when the henchman is at your base, you have to capture and interrogate or kill them. Yes, you can kill them yourself now. Why? To make room for new ones, because now there is a limit of 5 people, so you have to decide who is more important and interesting to you. Even the achievement which is given for hiring all the henchmen implies that some of them you will simply execute, even though there are a total of 11 of them. As opposed to the previous game, you will start the main campaign without any henchmen at all, and you will be given a choice of 4 side quests to hire one of them. I, of course, chose Jubei, since the teleportation is one of the most useful abilities, especially on these big and spacious islands. He also can deal a lot of damage, albeit being a little flimsy. Moreover, by choosing Max, I was counting on the dialogue of old friends, or at least acquaintances. As it turned out, such little things are not the strong side of Evil Genius 2. To be frank, I didn't chase all the henchmen, so I'll tell you about two that I've experimented with, Iris and Fugu Furukawa. Iris as a henchman is a mobile platform akin to EDI from Mass Effect 3 and is essentially a tank character due to her good starting health and quick regeneration ability. The second ability, which forces Iris to work like a camera, looks better than it works, because why would you need a camera if your henchman is already close to the enemy? Fugu, on the other hand, is pretty good support character. She's not very strong in combat, but she can poison any agent, even a super agent, causing him to lose vitality and resolve, and that without any attention or fighting. The second ability allows to throw a poisonous cloud at the enemy, which stops and poisons them. This is very useful, especially when you have a lot of enemies coming through narrow passages. Keep in mind that your minions get poisoned too, so you have to rely solely on your henchman in the cloud. I want to mention the henchman that was shown in almost all the trailers, at least the ones I saw, Full Metal Jackie. She has good starting characteristics, 300 of each. Her abilities are the buff on herself with a chance to set the enemy on fire when she attacks, and arming the muscle minions around her. So, why am I talking about her? For a while I was reading some of the game's Reddit, reading what's up there, and a lot of people complained that they couldn't hire her, only kill her. Turns out that since she's a fucking Lord of War or something in the lore, you can't touch her clients, particularly Jubei or Eli Jr. Up until the last third of the game, where you already have a quantum chemist and access to top research. Just read the goddamn guide, it's bullshit. Her stats are good of course, but her abilities doesn't look so good on paper, so it's up to you to decide if this crap is worth it. If you don't count this kind of hassle, henchmen work well in this game, and are vital fighters against super agents, since their characteristics have been increased and can be additionally boosted through research. On top of that, the life system has been removed completely, and super agents are no longer able to kill henchmen forever. One less thing to worry about. The minion system has also been slightly revamped. First, it is no longer necessary to have a pool of specialists to train new recruits. All it takes is to kidnap a trainer from the roadmap and interrogate him. And after that, all minions can train on their own. Specialist minion can accelerate the training, but it's not necessary. Second, they changed the minion stats system. There are 3 of them left: Vitality, Smarts and Morale. Well, I understand that attention was removed as it duplicated in its functions the smarts in the first game. I just don't get it if it was necessary to build stamina into vitality. If a minions get really tired, instead of fainting he'll just drop dead. In addition, the stats amount themselves are now equal for all types of minions, 50 units each, without the bonuses that some items give. They also added character perks, to add them a bit of personality I guess. Many of them are useless, like dog and cat lovers or board game players, while some increase the effectiveness of minions in combat, although globally it's not that noticeable. Third, all minions except construction workers and technicians now work for a salary. If they don't get paid, they start deserting, greedy sons of bitches. Fourth, the progression of minion is not linear, meaning that some of your workers will remain in a fixed position. The most notable example here being technicians. Even as science minions, they can become scientists now, but are a dead-end branch of evolution, so they take no part in research whatsoever. Technicians only haul and repair items at the base. However, because of one change, the technician staff will now be massive, and that change is rare mechanic. Each item has a health bar, which is not surprising in principle. The trick now is that this health will drop over time, regardless of whether someone uses the item or not. This leads to the fact that by late game, when you already have a large base, some items start to genuinely smoke from wear if you don't have enough technicians. I had 40 of them alone by the end of the game, since 30 of them couldn't handle a 5-floor base anymore. At this point, that limit of 300 minions becomes irritating. The main threat to your plans, besides the burning equipment, will be agents of the forces of justice, either of combined forces or of one of the alliances. Mostly, of course, you will see investigators, whose main task is to sniff out your plans, and if they find something suspicious and leave the island, they will be followed by more dangerous variations like soldiers, rogues or saboteurs. Personally though, I've mainly seen rogues and saboteurs as a part of super agent team or as a part of a story. And thank goodness for that, I guess. In the context of dealing with agents, the game has undergone a number of changes, both positive and negative. For example, you can now establish zones where your minions will automatically distract, capture or kill intruders. It works very well in a casino with distraction zone placed there. And that's it, your deceivers will bother investigators until they get bored and leave the island. However, the soldiers, for example, cannot be distracted. You can do anything but kill or capture them, and they walk right up to your base. And there, inside, these agents pose a real danger. The point is that the balance is broken. For example, an agent's level determines his bonus characteristics. In other words, an agent with a health of 150 units, when any of your muscle minions have 50, with a bonus from special equipment of 100, will be the norm. Here you can object, saying, geez, I have many more people, is it really a problem? Well, yeah, even in the early game with weak investigators. Any agent's damage is higher on average, their armor is high, and your minions will often just miss. All of this just translates into piles of body bags, because what? That's right, your people now also leave bags after their demise, which in turn reduces the morale of the minions around, leading to interesting picture. The fucking investigators, who shouldn't be a problem at all, kill the first minions, body bags start to pile up. As the new minions arrive, the investigators kill them, meanwhile the deceivers and scientists are running around trying to get rid of the corpses. Their morale drop and they'll bail on you. Eventually all the minions who can fight get mowed down, and the rest are deserting because they can't handle the violence. It's great, isn't it? But towards the end, when you already have zones, an army of minions, and you get the essence of the game and the new hit mechanic, then these agents pose little to no danger, only if you let their base work without supervision at all. The emergence of super agents bring much more chaos than basic agents, since each not only has powers but also brings their sidekicks with them. For example, Mr. X, the super investigator from Patriot, comes with investigators and leaves evidence against you everywhere. And Symmetry, the super thief of Anvil, appears with tips and steals your loot or money, blocking your cameras with her gadget. By the way, it's worth noting that at least these two spawns right inside the base, so be careful. There are now 6 super agents, one for each alliance, plus Blast from the Past, John Steele. But now there are many of them, they're different, there's even a Jane Steele, and in this game they grace all over the map, since they represent combined forces. However, the supers in the second Evil Genius are not really a sort of Damocles, for one reason, they don't come without cost. In order for one of them to show up, you have to perform a scheme on the territory where one was located. The rather amusing fact is that they only trigger if you finish the scheme. If you cancel it, they wouldn't care, and that can be used. Closer to the end of the game, of course, most enemies won't pose any threat. For you, we'll have a lot more guards and henchmen. In combination with Iris, Jubei is quite good at cracking skulls, because Iris can draw attention to herself and tank, and Jubei can teleport and knock enemies around with impunity. Such moves greatly simplify the game, but without them the game is much more complicated. I told you, the balance is broken. It's time finally to tell you about where all these agents are coming from, namely the global map, which has undergone significant changes, and not all of them positive. It's pretty awful really. First of all, instead of simply sending minions in packs to schemes like in the first game, the helicopter in the sequel takes one pack of minions at a time, or creating a queue. Why? Who benefited from this? Secondly, to open a region on a map and perform schemes, you need to create criminal networks. Criminal networks can be improved up to level 4, each requiring broadcast strength, certain types of minions and intel, depending on the level of network. Upgrading the network increases passive income from the network itself, replaces the available schemes with more profitable and long ones, and increases the hit limit of the forces of justice. This limit is a separate issue. The available schemes in each territory are the same, give or take with different requirements and rewards. They can now be distinguished by color. Yellow, bring small income, starter, use builders, 10,000 for 3 minutes and 20,000 for 30. Purple, reduce the hit of the forces of justice in a region, either for sending deceivers there for a long time or for cash and intel, but fast. Orange, relatively a lot of money and quickly, with a high rate of hit, requires the sending of muscle minions. Green, schemes for scientists, a lot of money but siphoning takes a long time and hit goes just as long. My favorite way to make money, 4 or 5 of this enough in principle, to be constantly in the black. In one of the patches blue schemes were added, which partially replaced purple, that is, they reduce hit for intel fast, plus added the ability to earn money for the same intel, quickly but risky. Now, regarding hit, just what the fuck did they made of it? Its essence in the first game was simple, you were making noise in the world, and forces began to send agents to you. The more noticeable you are, the more agents will come to you, and the stronger and more dangerous they will be. Hit dropped slowly, and you had to stay off the world map for a long time for the things to calm down. The new system does not provide any kind of challenge. If you fill the hit bar completely, the territory becomes blocked for any schemes for a relatively short period of time, and if you reach a certain hit rating within all the regions of the alliance, you will be notified about a visit from that alliance's boys. The funny thing is, they come in waves, and never, except for the final confrontation, will the representatives of all alliances come to you at once. It would seem that the consequences are no big deal, and you can do whatever you want. The point is that the region passively generates heat even if you don't do any schemes, and it generates it much faster if the super agent is sighted there. Schemes also generate heat, and if you start a scheme with a hit score that exceeds the threshold when completed, the scheme will fail, which is much more noticeable in the main and side quests. Essentially, the game forces you to constantly look at the map, and using purple and blue schemes reset your hit score in a region, and the closer you get to the end, the more often you will have to do this. This is where another problem comes into play: Intel. This resource is used in all schemes from the middle to the end of the game, and sometimes the requirement is as high as 30 units. With a maximum Intel pool of 99 units, double digits in 2021. In other words, you can't accumulate Intel, you have to spend it all the time. Intel generates slowly, considering that your workers like to eat and sleep, and interrogating engines doesn't bring a lot of Intel. This shit is very annoying. Why developers couldn't make some passive generation of this stuff or simply increase the limit at least 500 is beyond my comprehension. Such limitations are everywhere in this game. Evil Genius 2 is constantly trying to limit you, with this heat, Intel bullshit, disposable minions that are sent in one direction just so they don't draw heat to the island. Is this waiting sim or what? I also have issues with the technical component of Evil Genius 2. Not with optimization, it's on a level here, but the bugs. For example, the henchman, when manually pointing at a moving enemy, will keep twitching after him, but will not be able to strike as the enemy will move forward, moving away from the animation distance. However, the henchman cannot be withdrawn and will keep twitching until the enemy stops himself. These are minor things, though, whereas the softlocks are the real problem. I had one during the main story, when the assignment is to place fake Doomsday weapon blueprints and let them be stolen. These are different mission entries, and you have to complete all of them to proceed. So the thieves stole the blueprints which were not placed yet, hence one of the entries remained unfulfilled. They took it out of the base eventually, but the mission wasn't completed. I had to load the save. One thing that helped is the fact that nothing was going on in the game for a long period of time, and I didn't really lose anything. But the very fact that I could break the main story leads to bad thoughts about QA of this game. I had another soft look on a side mission. It required capturing and interrogating one of the tourists. Alright, I thought, and minded my own business, waiting for him to show up. Time passes, the tourist is still missing. I checked the casino, no tourists at all. Turns out, they are all stuck on the way out of the boat. They just couldn't make it upstairs to the casino. I tried to capture the one I needed right there, but my henchman was stuck there exactly the same way. Adding to the problem was the fact that the side quest could not be cancelled, and I could choose another one, which meant that if this bug had remained, I would have been in deep shit. But I got lucky, saving and loading the game fixed it. How? How was this game even tested? Despite all these flaws, it's still nice to play Evil Genius when it's not trying to bluntly limit you. For example, in the mid-game, after the transition to the third level of research, and closer to the end of the game. At least because most of the mechanics you understand at this point, you have adapted to the game, which by the way does not even have a normal guide to the subjects and events in this game. In contrast to the first game, everything will have to be experienced in your own skin. So, you got used to it, and you finally have a huge space for research and development, and you can dig deep and greedy and bring the beauty with a variety of decorative items, as well as redraw the entire base into impenetrable fortress by the end of the game. Building possibilities are still good. Evil Genius 2 doesn't take that away. The visuals are at a decent level, maintaining the artistic style of the first game with a pinch of Two Point Hospital. Well detailed and animated objects, nice effects, it's all here. The minion models have become a little more diverse, and the animations along with them, especially the Genius's animation. Just look how they move. But why was it necessary to make female fighters absolutely the same as males? It's impossible to distinguish them. What was even the point? Well, and a global map. Although it has become more detailed, has become completely unreadable. Just look at all this visual garbage, it's terrifying. At the same time, the sound effects are quite good. They don't hurt your ears in any way, so the game has no problems in this respect.
is wrong with either the minions or the training room, boss. A trap has been triggered.
However, the musical accompaniment of the game throughout its entire duration, although quite pleasant, is virtually unmemorable.
Something is wrong with either the minions or the training room, boss.
Nevertheless, I want to compliment the beautiful main theme of the Evil Genius 2, which partially repeats the title theme of the first game. Overall, of course, Evil Genius 2 is an uneven game, where bugs, lack of balance, and simply inadequate design decisions, such as limiting you to one side quest at a time, coexist with a really improved main campaign and a good construction system. It's definitely fun to play, but too many factors will distract and deprive you of that very fun. The funniest thing is, if the game had normal Q&A from the people who played the first Evil Genius, all this could be avoided. But the problems of the original stayed almost uncorrected and new ones added on top. The price tag of $30 is absolute bollocks, so the only hope that it will be properly fixed, and with some of the fixes being already implemented. They even managed to push out 1.5 patch while I was making this review. However, Rebellion focuses only on bugs and balance. I hadn't seen them making something with fundamental gameplay design problems yet. For this reason, at the moment I don't recommend buying it, just wait for discounts and further fixes. Anyway folks, play good games, I'll see you in the next video.